For Louisiana versus all y'all, Jarrett Roser with Mike Coppage, a guy that has been covering, really the state of Louisiana, but certainly that 337 area out there, Lafayette and Acadiana, New Iberia area for years now, has as good of a handle on that area as well as, a pulse on the state as anybody around. And there's a lot of notable storylines going on right now about midway through the season for some teams out in the Lafayette area. And so I'm really excited, Mike, to get you on the Louisiana versus all y'all channel and kind of talk about some of these things that we're watching right now. Appreciate your time, man.
Well, thanks, Jarrett, and congrats on your new gig. And nobody has a better pulse on the state than you. So, props to you for what you have going on. And yeah, this area is it's definitely a hot topic at the moment.
I appreciate you, and we'll start with one that, as much as I enjoy getting out there and covering the Lafayette area. And so I've enjoyed keeping up with LCA. This week's news at LCA has been big enough that folks all over the state are kind of, wondering what's going on and a little bit of the storyline. You had the report out, I guess it was Monday, about a change in leadership for the football program. On Tuesday, I had a radio station in North Louisiana asking me about it. And so there's a lot of interest in, just as they asked me, what is going on at LCA right now, football program wise, and kind of what do we know right now? What can you share about, a decision 4 weeks into the season to make a change at football coach?
Well, after reading, Eric Narcisse's report in the Acadiana Advocate with his statements from Zach Lockhart, it seems to ultimately boil down to him making a personnel change with firing an assistant, Skip Babineau. And according to Lockhart, he was told or instructed to make that personnel move. And obviously, according to the LCA side of things, that's not their side of things. And obviously, this triggered a response, and it turned out not to be a good move for Zach. And I know Pastor J Miller didn't issue a statement on the record, but we've seen the comments around social media from the Lafayette Christian folks. So I've had pleasant dealings with Zach in the past, and hopefully he'll land on his feet, and hopefully LCA will be able to win some games moving forward, because when you're winning, you don't have as many problems.
Yeah, I hope that it works out for everyone involved in some capacity, and particularly the kids. They've got a still very talented, really enjoyable bunch of kids over there that want to keep up the standard of what the guys that have come through before them have done. And they've been a team that's been a state championship contender year in and year out. They obviously have, a couple of good coaches that they turn the leadership over of the program to, guys that know those kids well and that the kids know well. And I don't know, I told someone recently, I think anytime that I've been to LCA, I've had a enjoyable time over there. But obviously, there's been a lot of turnover in terms of the coaching staff through the years, where I think they've had six different head coaches now, 6 or 7 different head coaches going back to, just before pandemic time. And so when that happens, like I told you, people start to wonder from the outside kind of what the dynamic is there. And again, I hope it all works out. I hope that it's the best move for the kids, but it's definitely something that caught all of our attention in a big way this week.
Yeah, and I actually covered their home game against Shaw on Friday, and I believe Grant had asked me last night if I detected anything unusual, and I didn't. And the final score of that game was a bit deceptive. It was LCA lost 31-8, but it was 3-0 in the third quarter, and they were missing Jalen Noel and Luke Green and more players on top of that. So it's not like that. It's not like they got blown out, on their turf, and the game was embarrassing or anything. But evidently, that this stemmed from a post-game chat that Coach Babineau had with the team. Is what evidently, I guess, was a domino that started some of these events. So there we go.
Yeah, and it sounds like from some social media stuff and a story from Eric Narcisse that skips back over there with those guys too. But You mentioned Jalen Noel and some other guys that were out this past week for LCA. There's some teams out there, some top teams that are dealing with some absences, and two of the two notables that we're not going to see playing this Friday or, for the next few Fridays. Westgate is now dealing with, another injury to Jabari Antoine, the fantastic Miami commit who was injured for a chunk of last year, as well as Bryant Leon Jr., who kind of stepped into his shoes last year and kept things steady for him at that quarterback spot. Two fantastic young athletes who now the Tigers are without. How tough is that for those guys with the big expectations and goals that they have for this season with the great 2025 senior class, and kind of where do they go to stay steady through a tough slate in district?
Well, it's like that they were surging into the Teurlings Catholic game, but they were hosting Teurlings, and they were coming off a dominating win over Lafayette Christian, and their first ever win over Lafayette Christian. So, everybody was looking at that Teurlings game, both teams coming in undefeated, and then the word started trickling out later in the week that Antoine was out and that he may be out for the whole season. And so, last year, Bryant Leon played quarterback well with Jabari out, and this year he was actually leading the team in receiving. And so I think he also suffered a significant lower body injury. So from what I understand, both could miss the rest of the season. I believe Matt Louvier from the Daily Iberian had said that they were running the wing T or in the Wildcat, with Gordon and Davian Jackson back there, and both Westgate and St. Thomas More both going to be hungry and kind of limping into this game this week. So when one of those teams gets the W this week, it's gonna feel good in that locker room.
Yeah, that was one that I had circled watching going into the season when we look at both of those teams as potential state championship contenders, and now both of them, as you mentioned, they come in off of tough losses and are just trying to get back right and get back some positive momentum flowing into the back half of this season. And look, last year with Jab out, Tobias Gordon and company, Tobias had a phenomenal junior season, and so they have some guys there that can kind of shoulder things and keep them among the notable teams to watch in the area. But I mean, when I heard about Jab, I guess Friday night, and BJ on Saturday morning, I just hate that for those guys that have both been through so much with Jabari injured now back-to-back years, and BJ dealing with some family loss earlier this year, and now having to work his way through an injury. Just, I mean, tough news for those guys.
Yeah, and maybe some of their loaded and talented 2028 class can get some more reps in the strategic positions. I know I've seen Caden Lancelin and Cayman Crockham both been starting at least at some point in the secondary for them. So, but we know that Westgate's loaded for the upcoming years to come, and it is really devastating because after the Lafayette Christian game, everybody was looking around and saying, "Hey, this is the team that is going to challenge Ruston." Of course, we can't forget about Central, and we could go on and on there, but everybody's looking at Westgate and saying, "Hey, this team, we see how they challenged Ruston last year, and they got the goods to do it again." And
I think
it's not like that now.
I think people kind of lose sight of how tight that playoff game was with Westgate and Ruston early last postseason, and that was when Jab was first getting back from the injury, and they were still kind of adjusting to him being back in the lineup. And obviously they were probably a little bit lower of a seed at that point than they would have been if he had been healthy all season. But I think you and I talked before the season a little bit, just messaging back and forth, that we were both really intrigued about Westgate's potential going into this year. And so, hopefully things go well for them. They and STM both, as we mentioned, trying to get back right. You mentioned this past week, another big win for a Teurlings team that has been as hot as anyone. You've got some great 4A teams out there in a couple of different districts, and Teurlings tends to get a little bit overlooked, going into the season compared to STM and Opelousas and Westgate and Cecilia and company. And then Teurlings is now atop a lot of rankings midway through the season. What has caught your eye about what those guys are doing under Coach Chapanche to have yet another fantastic start to this season?
Well, I was fortunate enough to get to do their season preview for the Acadiana Advocate for the last couple of years, and this year, after going to their picture day, I wasn't expecting them to be this good. I knew they were going to rely on their offensive line, but I don't think anybody knew just how good their offensive line was going to be. They're huge. They're average over 300, and they have length as well. It's not some 5'10" guys, and that they have multiple running backs that can gash you. And then last week, Munoz, the quarterback, was 7 of 8 passing. So when you have that kind of offensive line and precision passing, and their defense has been great. This is their year to get over the semifinal hump.
I don't know if you have much update on this, but I mentioned that Cecilia program among some of the other top 4A teams. We saw them in the Dome this past year against Opelousas. I know I got word Friday night that their great quarterback Diesel Solari was a little bit banged up, and I think he's had a couple of games where he's a little bit banged up. I don't know if we have an update on if they're expecting him to be available, if it's more serious than that. Hopefully he's all right. But have you heard much from Cecilia this week on if they're dealing with some injuries heading into the back half of the season, or how they're doing?
Yeah, the word I'm getting out of there is, and it's not official word, but the word I'm getting out of there is that it's a high ankle sprain, which is I think it's overall good news because they are expecting him back, and I would put him as questionable or doubtful for this week because the words that were thrown around to me were, hey, heal up, rest up for district. They're playing Notre Dame this week, and we all know, regardless of Notre Dame being at 500, that's a physical team. So if Diesel's not obviously he's not 100%, but if you go into Notre Dame and he gets hit, you're gonna take hits from a physical defense against Notre Dame. So I would expect him to be out this week, and I know they want to have him 100% for Opelousas if possible.
Absolutely. That's another team, like we mentioned with Westgate. They have other guys on that team that are really talented, and I'm sure we'll make plays trying to, keep things rolling without him. But Diesel's been such a fantastic, playmaker and kind of stirring the drink, so to speak, for those guys since he got back from a previous injury that he was dealing with a couple of years ago. So hate to hear that he's going to miss some time, but glad to hear that it sounds like he'll be able to get back, hopefully before too long. Another team to watch, and maybe making another deep run this season. You had a story. You'll be at that Westgate STM game. You had another preview this week that you wrote too that we were talking about before we started recording. Kind of an intriguing smaller school matchup that maybe is going a little bit under the radar, but some good talent on both sides. What did you kind of find out as you looked at the slate for this week, and tell us more about that game that folks should maybe keep a little bit closer of an eye on than is getting credit for right now?
Yeah, I was assigned the St. Edmund at Opelousas Catholic preview. To me, that district is kind of a mini New Orleans Catholic League. You have a lot of parochial schools that are well above average football programs, kind of with the opportunity to beat each other up in district. And St. Edmund and OC, that they're both undefeated coming into this game. And the more I dug into the info, the more I was impressed with St. Edmund, because I already knew about OC, but although I didn't realize that their quarterback, Cross Gillen, I didn't realize until I interviewed their coach and got the stats that he's actually leading the metro area in passing. And he has 13 TDs, no picks, and around 850 yards. But he's got Roderick Tesno on the outside, and then Royce Butler ran for over 200 last week against a good Sacred Heart team. So, Opelousas, they have some big names on their offense. Rowan Bergeron is another one, around 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds. These are guys that have the attributes of a Class 5A skill player, and they're on the 1A level. So that's what you have for OC. And on the flip side, St. Edmund, they're undefeated now. They haven't really been tested yet, but when I looked into it, I realized that they have three receivers averaging over 30 yards a catch, and then their quarterback, Kane West, he's tied for the area best with 13 touchdowns, along with the OC quarterback. But he's also near the area passing leaders. And then they have a running back, Henry Summerlin. Coach Shiver said he became a wrestler in the offseason, and that's what's his balance is stellar now, and he's averaging around 10 yards a carry. So it's the more I looked into it, just the more there were some interesting things. St. Edmund has a receiver that's I believe it's Blake Moran, but I'm going off the top of my head, which is dangerous, and listed around 6 foot 200, 4'5", 40. And then the tight end, I believe it's Marcus Gradney, 6'2", 210. He caught a TD last week. So these guys have some players that could be starting for large classification schools. So I mean, this is a kind of a low key, great small school matchup, along with Vermilion Catholic and Riverside. That's another one.
Yeah, there's always so many great options, and those smaller school matchups get overlooked sometimes because we see some of the hype around the 5As and 4As and whatnot, but a lot for fans in the area to keep an eye on this week. There's so much that we didn't even hit on, but I don't want to eat up too much of your time. I think we covered a lot of the big storylines right now, gave folks a few games to watch. Again, Mike will be out there at Westgate and STM. I'll see that Opelousas team coming my direction out to Zachary on Friday night for a big one out here. I was actually looking a little bit at that Vermilion Catholic and Riverside matchup before I saw the Opelousas Zachary and realized that I needed to go catch those guys each for the first time this season. But Mike, I appreciate your time for sure. And maybe we'll get a chance to do this again sometime. I'd enjoy that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll be looking forward to the Opelousas Zachary reports, because the Opelousas is a team that I love their style of play. So I've been following what they do closely.
Yeah, they'll be fun. And I wanted to mention Opelousas because I know how much you enjoy that kind of physical, run the damn ball brand of football. A Manny-made guy, Mike Coppage from up there, and enjoys covering those physical football teams all over the state. Mike, again, folks, keep up with all of his work, including that preview for that Opelousas Catholic and St. Edmund's game, and everything that he's doing out there for a few different outlets, including the Acadiana Advocate. Chiming in some work over there for Louisiana versus all y'all. Jarrett Roser, thanks again.